Day 939 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzie here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 638,000 military personnel losses, representing an additional 1,130 in the past day. Then as for hardware losses, 14 tanks, 13 APVs, and 23 artillery. Then we'll head straight into the Ukrainian map today, into the Donbass, where following a series of counterattacks, the armed forces of Ukraine have managed to improve their tactical positions in the area of Marynivka, as well as to the north of Selidova. Now, interesting to note, just a little bit south of Selidova, the tentacles of the Russian army have reached out to this exact point, and likely done so because zooming in, you find that that's where one of those Russian army friendly pieces of infrastructure exists, where a road commences. Some 6.5 kilometers or 4 miles southeast leading up to the town of Selidova itself. Though it remains to be seen what can come of this, with this region and indeed greater region expected to drop to overnight temperatures of 6 degrees Celsius or about 42 degrees Fahrenheit by the end of the month, with some heavy rain expected as early as next week. Meanwhile, this town, or the south of this town, of course, is not even the primary goal for Russia here, as that would be Pokrovsk. So the marginal gains or decrease in tempo for Russian advancements will absolutely need to change if Russia wants to avoid getting bogged down in the soon-to-be muddy weather located right here. All as they attempt to approach with their primary goal further northwest, about 25 kilometers or 15 miles away. Now, with these very recent limited Russian gains, we also see a similar story outplay itself in the region's southern front, where the Ukrainian forces continue to keep the Russian forces at bay, east of the Vovcha River, where it would appear that their textbook encirclement hasn't actually lived up to their expectations as fast as they would like it to have, potentially leading the Russian forces to expand their encirclement tactics to the very northwest. Then headed across on the map, we'll head to the north at Kursk. So starting off with some interesting news from Russian channels about operations in the Gloshkovo direction, as according to these sources, Veseloy is surrounded by Ukrainian forces as they continue towards Gloshkovo. Specifically, the telegram message said, quote, "The enemy, having surrounded the village of Veseloy, is trying to build on its success in the direction of Gloshkovo along the asphalt road, occupying forest belts with the advance of columns." And then as for the Russian offensives, the initial operational tempo had the Russian forces reach up to Snagost, which might become a key battleground moving forward as they approached from Korenovo, with Snagost in all of its glory being about 10 or 11 streets that the town comprises of. Although the Russian army will really want to expand its capacity to move forward more freely heading in this direction, with the AFU certainly putting fire control on the main and only road leading into the settlement. Then, as a result of all the previous Russian operations, the hospital in Zeleznogorsk, in Russian-controlled Kursk, is now completely overloaded with Russian soldiers because, due to those former Russian counteroffensive engagements, their losses have already reportedly become quite significant. But those lucky enough to walk, or even walk with crutches, will almost undoubtedly be sent back for a secondary, less effective wave attack. It's quite literally, as we've come to see, how the Russian army works. And speaking of Russian losses around here, there's also the Russian hardware losses on this front too. So, for example, here we have the UA Reg Team, unit of the 8th Special Operations Forces Regiment, who is striking Russian armored vehicles at the Kursk front. And of particular note, we're also now seeing the use of the Ukrainian thermite drones, now or evidently operational in this region as well. Oh, and fun fact, the Kremlin has now decided to update the former October 1st date that was requested or demanded to take back all of Kursk. The new date, a little bit more fluid, is said to be between October 15th and October 30th. They may need a lot more conscripts for that. In fact, some of the newly minted Russian POWs in this very region are conscripts. Classic Russia. Then to another location with Russian expansionist attitudes is in the northeast of Kharkiv. As in this latest instance, we saw a Russian armored personnel carrier trailing right behind a tank with a mine roller with a shed. It's likely that this smaller unit was attempting to clear a pathway for a larger assault, but never got the chance to finish what they started, as the AFU drones were ready and waiting for their arrival. Then taking a look around, because somewhere on the east we saw some before and after shots of some more Russian turtle tanks in all of their beautifully unique glory, being most easily identified specifically after their demise. Then to rattle off a few more events in the east, we saw a destroyed Russian T-80 BV turtle tank and BMP-2 in Donetsk. Then another T-80, this time it was a destroyed BVM variant, meaning to say it had some modern upgrades. Also was a Russian Mr. S SPG being taken out by one of the OG US-provided Switchblade 600 drones. Then as for something different on the map, as part of the ever-changing and evolving landscape, a Ukrainian FPV drone cleared the road from Russian anti-tank mines. Now, these TM62 anti-tank mines typically need hundreds of pounds to set them off. However, the quadcopter is very likely flying along with a payload of, for instance, with a shaped charge, which focuses the blast in a particular direction, allowing for a lighter charge to penetrate the landmine casing and initiate the detonation. It's also quite likely that you would need a skilled operator to pull something like this off. Then headed into Russia and back to Toropets for the day that was, just yesterday, where Russia once boasted back in 2018 about this modern and newly built ammunition depot that they claimed to be nuclear blast-proof reinforced. But then we skip forward to 2024, and what was the excuse they gave yesterday? That they neutralized all Ukrainian UAVs, but a bit of drone debris caused perhaps the biggest explosion we've seen in this war. Something does not add up here, guys. And it was interesting how even Russia's top propagandist Syelovov called for mill bloggers to not share videos of the explosion at Toropets, as it, quote, plays into the hands of the enemy. Surely it was a little too late for a comment like that to be made, not to mention the fact that it was visible from space. And this is where it should be mentioned that even though Russia has implemented significant internet censorship and control measures, you can still send an email from a Russian email account inside of Russia to any email address in the world. But it is the encrypted messaging apps like Telegram that are really causing a problem for the Kremlin in this regard. And for this event from yesterday, as it turns out, a lot of the ammunition stores were located outside of this location in true Russian style. I mean, they really flaunted this as a new high-tech location, and I quite enjoyed how the Russian MOD in 2022 said of it, quote, "It meets the world's highest standards of safety and storage of missiles and munitions." Gee, some military contractor oligarch got wealthy from this construction, misappropriating the funding, leaving the end result being a cheap Soviet-style depot like all the rest. But lastly for this event, it cannot go without mention that there's several reports of Ukraine's use of the pernicious drone missile for this event, which is a Ukrainian-developed hybrid system combining drone capabilities with missile technology for added speed, payload, and precision striking. Plus, nearby Russian soldiers to the site themselves even said they heard a jet approaching, which would very likely refer to the jet propulsion technology used for this specific hybrid weapon. And with the pernicious missile drone now beyond its prototype stage and well into serial production, it's truly a concerning development for Russia. Then we'll head across on the map and still within Russia, as overnight a warehouse near the city of Rostov-on-Don was on fire near the bridge of Voroshilovsky, which is the main bridge to the city. Witnesses reported hearing a sound resembling a drone before the incident. Russian authorities, however, reported that all was fine at the unidentified warehouse near the bridge. But videos from the location disagree. Then we'll head across to some news for today. So, most recent military aid announcement from Germany was announced today and includes a wide array of equipment aimed at enhancing Ukraine's defense capabilities. This 500 million euro package includes 22 Leopard 1A5s, 22 MRAP vehicles, air surveillance radars, reconnaissance drones, and artillery shells. Additionally, self-propelled anti-aircraft guns, mine countermeasure tanks, and logistical vehicles are part of the package. But of particular note is the 61,000 155mm artillery shells. Because usually when the German government provides artillery shells of the gold standard NATO caliber, the 155s, it's typically around the level of 10, 15, or 20,000 shells. So this latest package represents a significant increase of shells in a single run, suggesting that Germany and Europe in a wider context is starting to ramp up production of these much needed ammunition types. So the impact of this shell aid and shell aid from other Western partners will undoubtedly be felt on the battlefield. Then in some more hardware news, France plans to upgrade some of the Mirage 2000-5 fighter jets it is set to deliver to Ukraine by the end of 2024. This particular upgrade aims to improve their effectiveness in certain combat roles and especially in ground attack missions, expanding their utility beyond air-to-air engagements. Then moving on with the news, as Belarusian President Lukashenko is making news headlines again, and once again due to his regular rants. With this time claiming, quote, "The Americans have instructed Kyiv to attack our infrastructure along the southern border," with threatening that an attack on Belarus is World War III. What a way to talk your country up. However, he did play it very cool with the faux pas event of numerous Russian drones entering Belarusian airspace that required to be shot down for what he described as the Russian drones that were merely flying near the territory of Belarus. But other than that, to go heavily into dissecting what crazy Uncle Lucas says is usually just a waste of time, just because of the nonsensical nature of almost all of his rants. Then headed across to another Russian military mobilization blunder segment, bit of a quick one, as here we have Russian bloggers who are pouring out revelations about the constant sending of unwanted soldiers, Russian soldiers, regardless of their specialization, to assault squads. Even full-time propagandists like Sasha Kotz cite many examples, including the use of specialists in IT, artillery, and engineering that were sent to those assault roles during military operations leading to their loss. The author also criticizes Russian military leadership for failing to adapt to modern warfare needs, particularly in the use of specialized units like the UAV reconnaissance teams. And so on this story, now almost all of us have worked in a job before where we've just felt like a number, but thank yourself lucky because nothing will make you feel more like a number than this, as the Russian MOD is constantly scrambling to fill their units, to fill those gaps on the front line. Because Russia's constant stream of sending thousands upon thousands of Russian soldiers to Ukraine represents the quintessential status quo of their military approach to sustain the war effort now. It's a hole they got themselves in. Then headed across to a couple of quick funnies to round it all off for today, guys. So first one might be a little bit lowbrow or slightly dark, I should say, as Russians are saying now that in the Kursk region, military vehicles are also getting speeding tickets on highways. One unfortunate Russian soldier in a Buhanka van with a military license ended up in jail for 15 days for covering his registration plate to avoid the penalty. Once again, it's another case of Russian priorities. Then to a quick 5-second funny to round it all off for today, guys. So in the town of Revda in Russia's Sverdlovsk region, free-roaming pigs have taken over the streets, with locals reporting that they've become so full that they walk around the city like people. And although it's not exactly a relatable subject to my videos, my mind does still tend to link even Russian pigs now to having some expansionist attitudes, just like their Kremlin overlords. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks again for watching. Please continue to like and comment as we continue to spread, well, a lot of messages here, not the least of which is this anti-autocratic or even anti-dictatorship message. So thanks again, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.